So here's the thing. Last Tuesday, it was the worst night of my adult life. And so there is going to be, it occurs to me, lots of need for protection and defense. But we can't only be on the defense in this period. We have to be able to take advantage of whatever strategic openings there are, no matter how small, and frankly, no matter how large. We're going to be pushed deeply past our capacity. This is the time to remember things like no one had the capacity to end slavery. I just can't imagine Frederick Douglass running around saying, oh, my organization can't handle doing that next thing, that Underground Railroad thing, because we don't have the capacity. And so our purpose here tonight really is to hear from others, my esteemed colleagues and heroes and sheroes on the stage, about what their thoughts are in this critical moment, and then to have a conversation with all of you engaged as well.
I'm originally from the South, and the generation before me, they actually were, they picked cotton. They were migrant farmers. So my mother's generation, she was the youngest, they experienced a lot of the kinds of policies that people are worried right now that might be in place again in the near future. And so I think one of the things that was really important for me to recognize is that, you know, the fight doesn't stop here. And so they experienced a lot of change in their life. They're 80 and 90 years old. And so their advice to me was just to pick up and start again, just keep moving on, because they've seen incredible change in their lifetime and they believe it to be possible again.
So, you know, I'm sure like everyone in this room, it's still a work in progress, right? What do we think post-election? And it goes through waves, right? You think you sort of got a framework for making, you know, peace and how do I move on? And then there's a wave of despair, and it's back and forth. But the refrain that I find myself, I keep coming back to is people really need us now. They needed us before, but they really need us now. And when I say we, I don't mean some proverbial sort of diffuse we. I mean literally we, the people in this room and the people that we know. And it's painfully clear to me now that the states and cities are the new arena. Or, you know, more so than they were before, the new arena, both, you know, for a lot of the really important defense work that Rinku mentioned that is going to need to happen now. Just, you know, sort of putting up some firewalls, wrapping a protective embrace around our neighbors. But also, it's the only place, let's be frank with ourselves, that offense work, right, to move the progressive ball down the field is going to happen in the next 2 and 4 years. And we need to, you know, we're going to continue, I think, to go through this sort of shock and mourning process, but we also need to suit up really quickly because people really need us right now. And there's no cavalry coming from the federal government. It's on us. And, you know, tons of defense work. I think we have an opportunity to do that. There's a window, and it's not going to last. I don't know how long it's going to last. It's not going to be long, where we can really call upon people to find their courage. This is unlike anything that's happened in our lifetime before, and it will be a generational moment, I think, for everyone in this room and in this line of work and in organizing. And I think, you know, you find your reserves, right? And you don't think about, do I have the capacity for that? Like, someone that you love is in trouble, and you suit up and you get it done for them.
I think it's important to note that at the beginning, this is not the first president that we've elected with intonations of racism and sexism. And it's very important that we name that, because not naming LBJ, Kennedy, Reagan, who ran off of a campaign whose major theme was, anybody remember? Welfare Queen and campaign thing, Make America Great Again. Same thing, Make America Great Again. It makes it seem like we're in a new place, and I agree that this isn't the same space, But this is a part of a historical arc that, while being silent on racism and sexism because we like those policies, it still existed. Now, no one can say that racism and sexism did not play a role in this election. Majority of white males voted for Trump. The majority of Black, Latino, Asians voted for Clinton. The majority of men voted for Trump. But at the same time, I don't think that, I think it's too simple if we just say that this election was about race and about sexism. Because I don't think that everybody that voted for Trump was a racist, and everybody, or sexist, or everybody that voted for Clinton was anti-racist or anti-sexist. So going into it, we knew we had to run a marathon. We just didn't know we would have to run uphill. And I agree with Sonia that the state and local arena is where we really have to hunker down and we really have to make some level of change.
I'm angry, I'm incredulous. I don't understand how people can vote the way they vote. And I may differ with some of my colleagues on the panel in some respects. I'm not saying that racism or I should say, and misogyny drove all of this election. But for those who found it possible to vote for Donald Trump, those issues weren't important enough to them. That's right. I was in the Justice Department when President Reagan was elected. That was a tough time. And we had to get through that. I have to tell you that this feels worse to me. I think it is worse. I think that this is worse than what we know right now, and we know it's bad. But I also have been thinking a lot about how much was within our grasp until last week. The Supreme Court being one of those things, in a way that during my whole professional career, hasn't been within our reach. Those of us who struggle for justice, we are often, or always it seems, struggling up against incredible odds. That's just the way it is. And if for a moment I thought that was going to change, that was misplaced. That's just the nature of it. But history is on our side. The demographics of the country are on our side. And right is on our side. And we have to remind ourselves of that and then, gird up again for a new round of struggle.
I'm coming up on almost a year of being an organizer. And I know that we have so much energy and so much momentum from young people, from communities of color, from the LGBTQ community, from women. We have so much energy and so much momentum, but a lot of people just don't know what to do with it. And I think that's why we have to advertise organizations and events, and we gotta bring people and we gotta give information, because that's honestly how we're gonna reclaim our country, and that's how we're gonna reclaim our bodies from the system. I honestly strive and promote the dismantling of the whole system and building a system that's for the people, by the people, actually. Not just in words, but in action, and that it shows. Just show them what a democracy actually looks like.
Sonia, you mentioned the need to work at the state and local level, that's where we're going to have openings that will be blocked for us at the federal level. Can you say a little more, and in particular, give us one or two specifics that you think are opportunities?
Oh yeah, it's not going to be easy sledding here at in the state legislature, right? The things that I'm going to highlight as opportunities are tough organizing tasks, but nonetheless opportunities. So one, I'll say, at a time when we should expect and prepare, because he's told us as much, that the president-elect is going to be working, and many of his Republican colleagues are going to be working to dismantle the federal education infrastructure. Massachusetts has an opportunity to step up and once again really be a national leader with respect to education policy and give a roadmap, both to serve our own students and our own selves, but also a roadmap to our sister states on how we can, in fact, it is possible, get 100% of our students access to a great education. And a lot of the pieces of that roadmap are actually already in place, right? This is big political organizing, but from a technical standpoint, there are many things that are known to us, right? It's not all unknown. So I would point to many of the education policy nerds in the room will be familiar with the Foundation Budget Review Commission report, but for those who aren't, this was a bipartisan commission of education stakeholders, across the spectrum, who were tapped by the legislature to basically meet for a year, have hearings across the state, talk to grassroots, everybody across the spectrum. And the sort of bottom line summary there is that we are shorting public education in Massachusetts between $1 and $2 billion a year, with a B, billion with a B. And so we need to pick up the recommendations of that report and fight like hell and organize like hell to make sure that the legislature and the governor are effectuating those recommendations. So that's one opportunity is that those recommendations exist, they're ready to go, they're shovel ready.
North Carolina has been the belly of the beast right now. When it's ground zero when it comes to civil rights in many respects, and it all starts at local, state, and local and state level, and we who have worked out of the civil rights paradigm for good reasons believed that were taught that it was the federal government, it was the federal courts to whom we turned for civil rights. For good reasons we did that. But that's an old paradigm. We have to take control of state and local politics and engage in efforts to turn all of this around. The courts are so important. Obviously, they will remain so important. But people have to be out in the streets, ultimately. That's what needs to happen to back these folks up.
There's this thing called adultism, where it's like, because I'm a young person, my perspective and my views and my opinions don't really matter because of my age and my status in society. And I work hard towards any platform that I have an advantage to having, speaking about it and educating people about it, because young people pave the way, we really do. And without us, nothing is really gonna happen. And that's why it's so important to have youth voice everywhere. Like in our schools, when we were fighting the budget cuts, it was all youth-led. All the walkouts were youth-led. It was young people organizing it, strategizing, thinking about who's going to be peacekeepers, and it was young people out on the streets making sure that the police knew that the young people had this under control, that youth could do this. Youth has so much energy, and they're not as clueless as a lot of people perceive them. We know what's going on. Long after all these politicians are dead, we're gonna be the ones still stuck here.
Okay.
I do think that it is important that philanthropy collaborates more, that we use our cash as well as our cachet, our institutional power to get behind these racial justice issues. That's why I'm glad that Hyams is partnering and Nellie Mae. And we would love to have the Boston Foundation and the Barr Foundation to partner in supporting these organizations that we need at the ground level doing this work, because we need Boston Student Union, BSAC, and Mass Budget and Policy, and all of it in order to move the agenda. In Massachusetts, we know that there are livable wage gaps. We've got to address people in Lawrence and Springfield and other parts of the country. We've got to address those gaps with our philanthropic dollars, so that means breaking down our silos. Yes, we do education work, but the fight for 15 is an important part of our work too, because that impacts students' opportunities to learn.
there are absolutely blatant forms of discrimination and racism. They're there in subtle ways too. And what I love about bringing different organizers together across the Northeast and across the country, as John's mentioned, by convening and having organizers talk together. How I'm experiencing it this way. How are you experiencing it? What did you do when that happened? Having people come together and exchange practices, because although, it's the beast, no matter where you are, it's still the beast. And so I do feel like there are things about this election. For example, I heard statistics on NPR that the one thing that united all of Trump supporters is whiteness. It was not education, it wasn't region, it wasn't anything but just whiteness. And so that is something that I think it's easier for people from the South to say, quite frankly, than it is for people of color who are organizers here to talk with our white allies about what needs to be done.
When you hear everyone touts Massachusetts #1 in the country in education, #1 in the country. And true, blacks and Latinos are performing better than most across the country, but they're not performing better than you. And at some point, that's when this conversation breaks down. But we need to constantly show the disparity gap and say this is an abnormality. We should not be able to determine by race or ethnicity who's more likely to graduate, who's less likely to be in gifted and talented courses. That's an abnormality, and Massachusetts has to address it. On the youth question, I think it's great that young people are providing a lot of energy and actually leading the way and showing the nation that we need to change. I would like for philanthropy to find a way to connect that solidarity, that unity, that protest with some level of infrastructure to engage them in the democratic process. Rosa Parks didn't just sit down on the bus and things changed. They led that into civil disobedience, a bus boycott for over a year. At the same time, the NAACP was filing a lawsuit that went to the Supreme Court that ended segregation. So the march was part of a much larger political strategy. And I think today, because of social media, there's some people who believe that protesting and marching is the power. It's a tool, but it's not the power in sum total.
I believe deeply that young people need to take the reins of these struggles away from older people. Now that's not to say that older people don't have a place, but it is just a way of life that young people are going to do that. And there are going to be those tensions. I can live with that.
A lot of young people have this energy and this momentum, and they want to do something, they just don't know what to do. And that's where young leaders come through, and they're like, well, we have this space that's youth ran, and you can come and we can organize and we can protest, and whatever it feels like you think that we need to do, like we can do that. But I think we need connections with our communities. Like young people, we do so well in supporting each other and lifting each other up, and we need that outreach and that support from the outside community.
Well, respectfully, I think it's great when and if older people get behind young folks. But old folks don't make revolution.
Sure.
And, don't wait for them. Push them.
I would ask everyone here as you're leaving, you go home tonight and think, what did I get out of this forum today, and what am I doing to cause justice in the world? I would ask everybody here, sign up for a list, right? If it's not mine, Schott's, Hyams, sign up for a list so that you are getting more information than you previously had about what the next do now is, right? As these policies and these debates come to a head. Raise money for something, right? I'm sure everyone here gives money. Take it to the next level. And you can get paralyzed with all of the options of good things that you could raise money for. I'm going to invoke one of my favorite organizing truisms: never do nothing. Right? Just pick something. It doesn't have to be the most fabulous, efficient, whatever. Just pick something that you're going to ask 10 of your friends to write a check to. And then pressure someone who is in elective office at some level once a month.
We need to keep learning. We need to keep fighting, and we need to keep loving one another, just like I love all of you all, because after Tuesday, when the alarm rang Wednesday morning, you got up and you showed up. So thank you, and on behalf of the Schott Foundation, I appreciate it.
Thank you.